The human colony on Phaedrius, nestled amidst bioluminescent forests and glowing rivers, was a sanctuary in the vast Andronexus galaxy. Phaedrius wasn't just a planet, it was a wonder. The trees pulsed with faint light, their leaves refracting into every color of the spectrum, and nocturnal creatures darted like living constellations under the twin moons. For years, the settlers believed they had found paradise, free from the dangers of deep space. 8-year-old Lyra loved the forest's edge, where the lights of the colony faded into the wild unknown. Despite her parents' warnings, her curiosity often pulled her beyond the safety of home. Her favorite spot was an ancient tree with bark that glimmered silver, its roots forming a natural cradle. That night, as the moons aligned in the sky, Lyra ventured out again, clutching the small locket her mother had given her, a family heirloom etched with intricate star patterns. The forest was unusually quiet, the usual hum of life replaced by a suffocating stillness. Lyra felt a strange pressure in the air, like the planet was holding its breath. She hesitated, glancing back toward the distant lights of the colony. That's when she heard it, a low, mechanical hum growing louder. The stars seemed to ripple, and from the sky descended a massive ship unlike anything Lyra had ever imagined. Its surface glistened like liquid metal, shifting and morphing as if alive. Pulsing lights danced along its hull, creating patterns too complex for her to comprehend. Before Lyra could move, metallic tendrils shot from the ship, wrapping around her with cold, unyielding strength. She screamed, thrashing against her captor, but the tendrils lifted her effortlessly off the ground. The ship opened, revealing an interior bathed in harsh blue light. Lyra was pulled inside, and the hatch sealed shut, silencing her cries. The interior was alien in every sense. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsating in rhythm with the ship's hum. Strange symbols flickered across translucent panels, and the air smelled of ozone and something metallic. Lyra was placed in a crystalline chamber, the walls shimmering as if alive. She pounded on the surface, but it didn't budge. A figure approached, a towering reptilian being with scales that shimmered like molten silver. Its eyes, cold and calculating, glowed faintly in the dim light. Cybernetic implants adorned its body, wires and conduits snaking across its flesh. When it spoke, its voice reverberated through the chamber, guttural yet precise. "The key has been acquired," it declared, turning to another of its kind. Lyra didn't understand the words, but the tone filled her with dread. She clutched her locket tightly, its cool surface grounding her. Her heart raced as she watched the creatures, their movements deliberate, almost mechanical. Through the crystalline walls, she glimpsed the ship's destination. The stars outside blurred as the craft entered hyperspace, and in moments, the desolate moon of Crothatsis Prime loomed ahead. Unlike Phaedrius, this world was dead, a wasteland of jagged rocks and sulfuric haze. As the ship descended, Lyra felt a chill run through her. Even at her young age, she could sense this place was wrong. The ship landed with a thud, its landing struts sinking into the blackened soil. Lyra's chamber began to move, transported on a hovering platform as the reptilian creatures guided it outside. The atmosphere was oppressive, the air thick and suffocating. She squinted against the harsh light of the fortress ahead, its towering spires clawing at the sky. The fortress gates opened with a deep groan, revealing an interior of intricate carvings and alien machinery. Lyra's platform stopped abruptly in a grand chamber, and she was released from the crystalline prison. She stumbled but caught herself, her small figure dwarfed by the room's massive scale. Around her, shadows moved. She heard the scrape of claws against stone, the deep rumble of breathing. From the darkness, they emerged dragons unlike anything in her storybooks. These were the Drakkar Zenith, the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. Their scales glowed faintly with plasma energy, and their eyes burned like miniature suns. Some bore metallic augmentations, with cybernetic wings and talons humming with power. Their movements were both animalistic and eerily calculated, like predators who had evolved beyond mere instinct. One dragon stepped forward, larger and more imposing than the rest. Its scales shimmered in hues of violet and gold, and a crown-like formation of spines adorned its head. Its voice was deep and commanding, the walls seeming to tremble as it spoke. "You dare bring a human child to our domain," it growled, directing its ire at the reptilian captors. The aliens bowed low, their cybernetic limbs clicking. "The human is the key," one explained. "Her genetic anomaly aligns with the Chronospire's requirements. She alone can activate it." The dragon, whose name Lyra would later learn was Virax, leaned closer, his molten eyes fixed on her. She felt the heat radiating from his massive body, her skin prickling under his gaze. "If you are wrong," Virax said, his voice a dangerous whisper, "she dies." Lyra trembled, clutching her locket tightly. Unbeknownst to her, the locket began to hum faintly, its surface glowing with a soft golden light. None of them noticed not yet. But the dragon's attention lingered on her, their predatory instincts heightened, sensing something unusual about this small, terrified human child. As the chamber fell silent, the locket's hum grew louder, and a spark of golden light escaped its surface, unnoticed by all but Lyra. She gasped softly, her fear mingling with a strange, inexplicable feeling of power stirring within her. The journey through the fortress was like traversing the bowels of a mechanical beast. Lyra was flanked by her reptilian captors as they guided her deeper into the labyrinth of the Dracozenith's stronghold. The corridors pulsed with dim, alien light, and the walls hummed faintly as though alive, carrying whispers in a language Lyra couldn't understand. Her locket glowed faintly beneath her fingers, a source of warmth in the cold, foreboding halls. She was led into a cavernous chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows and its floor glowing with molten veins of orange and red. The heat was intense, but not unbearable, the air filled with the tang of sulfur. Strange machines lined the walls, their design both organic and technological, their purposes inscrutable. But what truly dominated the room was the presence of the Dracozenith. They emerged from the shadows, one by one. Massive creatures with scales that shimmered like precious metals, their bodies brimming with power. Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she saw their talons crackle with energy and their eyes burn like miniature stars. Some of them had cybernetic enhancements, metallic spines, augmented wings that hummed with plasma, and glowing circuits embedded in their flesh. These weren't just dragons, they were something far more dangerous. At the center of the chamber stood Virax, the largest and most imposing of them all. His violet and gold scales reflected the molten light, and his eyes glowed with an intelligence that sent chills down Lyra's spine. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber, deep and commanding. "You bring a human child to our domain," Virax growled, his gaze piercing the reptilian aliens. "Explain yourselves, now." One of the alien captors stepped forward, bowing low. Its voice was guttural, clicking with mechanical undertones. "The human is the key. Her genetic anomaly aligns with the Chronospire's requirements. Without her, the device cannot be activated." Virax narrowed his eyes, his massive head lowering until his snout was only feet from Lyra. His hot breath washed over her, and she shivered despite the heat of the chamber. She clutched her glowing locket tighter, its faint hum the only thing keeping her from succumbing to terror. "If you are wrong," Virax said, his tone cold and deliberate, "you will pay for this insult with your lives." Another dragon, smaller but no less fearsome, stepped forward. Its scales shimmered in shades of blue and silver, and its voice was softer but no less menacing. "The Chronospire is no toy for these aliens to exploit," it said, addressing Virax. "If the child cannot activate it, she must not live to see another day. The Spire's secrets must remain sealed." Lyra's heart pounded as the dragon's discussion turned to her fate. The locket around her neck grew warmer, its hum louder. She glanced down at it, and for a moment, it pulsed with a golden light that filled the chamber. The dragons recoiled slightly, their eyes narrowing as they noticed the sudden brilliance. "What is this?" Virax rumbled, his gaze locking onto the locket. "The relic she carries. It reacts." The reptilian alien captors exchanged glances, clearly surprised. "We did not detect any artifact on her person," one hissed. "It must be of human origin." Virax roared, his tail slamming into the ground and sending tremors through the chamber. "Fools! The Celestia's touch is all over this trinket. Did you not think to search her more thoroughly?" Lyra shrank back as Virax's gaze returned to her, but before he could say more, the chamber began to shake. A deep rumble echoed through the fortress, and the molten veins in the floor flared brighter. The dragons tensed, their heads swiveling toward the walls as if listening to some inaudible signal. "The spire awakens," one of the dragons hissed. From the far end of the chamber, a massive door began to grind open, revealing a towering, spiraling structure bathed in ethereal light. It looked alive, its surface shifting and pulsating like the heart of some ancient beast. This was the chronospire, the object of the aliens' quest. The air grew thick with energy, and the locket around Lyra's neck pulsed in time with the spire. She felt a strange sensation, a pull, as if the spire were calling to her. The dragons and aliens alike turned their attention to her, their expressions ranging from awe to suspicion. Virax leaned closer, his molten eyes studying her intently. "Child," he said, his voice softer but no less commanding, "you feel it, don't you? The spire calls to you." Lyra nodded hesitantly, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know why. I'm scared." "Fear is irrelevant," Virax said. "If you are the key, then prove it. Step forward and awaken the spire." The aliens gestured for her to move, their cybernetic limbs clicking as they directed her toward the glowing structure. The dragons watched closely, their postures tense, ready to act at the first sign of treachery. Lyra hesitated, but the pull of the spire was irresistible. She took a step forward, then another, until she stood before the massive structure. As she reached out her trembling hand, the locket around her neck flared with brilliant golden light. The spire responded, its surface rippling like liquid. Symbols began to appear, glowing with a light that seemed to come from another dimension. Lyra's hand touched the spire, and a surge of energy coursed through her. The room was filled with blinding light as the spire fully activated. The dragons roared in astonishment, their cybernetic enhancements crackling with energy. The aliens fell to their knees, shielding their eyes from the brilliance. Lyra's small voice echoed through the chamber, layered with a tone that wasn't her own, a voice ancient and powerful. "The chronospire awakens. Those unworthy shall not pass." The fortress trembled as the spire unleashed a wave of energy, creating a shimmering barrier that separated Lyra and the dragons from the aliens. The reptilian creatures shrieked in fury, attempting to breach the barrier, but it repelled them with bursts of light. The dragons stared at Lyra, their eyes filled with a mix of awe and fear. Virax stepped forward, his massive head bowing slightly. "You are no mere child," he rumbled. "The Celestia's mark is upon you." Lyra looked at her hands, still glowing with golden light, and felt a strange mixture of fear and wonder. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "The spire has chosen you," Virax said, his voice reverent. "And the galaxy will never be the same." The chamber was bathed in a pulsating golden light, the chronospire now fully awakened and towering above Lyra like a sentinel from another world. Its surface rippled with alien energy, glyphs and symbols appearing and disappearing in rhythmic waves. Lyra stood frozen at its base, her small hand still pressed against its glowing surface. The air hummed with a power that felt both ancient and alive. The dragons and aliens were momentarily united in their awe, but the peace was fleeting. The reptilian captors, now separated by the spire's shimmering energy barrier, erupted into chaos. They screamed and clawed at the barrier, their cybernetic implants sparking as they tried to force their way through. "She's activated it," one of them shrieked. "The key is attuned. We must retrieve her." The largest alien leader stepped forward, its metallic arms extending into blade-like appendages. "The spire's power belongs to us. Bring it down." But the spire responded. With a low, resonating hum, it emitted a wave of golden energy that rippled outward like a heartbeat. The wave struck the aliens, and their bodies convulsed as if the very essence of their being was rejecting them. One by one, they disintegrated into particles of light, their cybernetic enhancements crumbling to dust. Lyra gasped, stumbling back from the spire. "I didn't mean to." "I didn't," she stammered, tears streaming down her face. Her locket pulsed faintly, as if trying to comfort her. The dragons, however, didn't flinch. If anything, the wave seemed to invigorate them. Their plasmaline scales shimmered brighter, their movements more fluid. Virax stepped forward, towering over Lyra, his molten gold eyes filled with something she hadn't expected, respect. "You did not mean to destroy them," Virax said, his voice softer than before, though still commanding. "But the spire's will is clear. It deems them unworthy." Lyra's hands trembled as she looked up at him. "I don't understand what's happening. What is the spire? Why does it want me?" Another dragon, smaller but elegant and adorned with cybernetic wings that shimmered like glass, approached. Its voice was softer, almost soothing. "The spire is more than a machine, child. It is a relic of the Celestia, the great creator who shaped us, your kind, and countless others. It does not simply choose, it judges." The other dragons murmured in agreement, their voices a chorus of rumbling growls and low hisses. The name Celestia reverberated through the chamber like a sacred chant. "Judges?" Lyra asked, her voice cracking. Virax nodded. "The Celestia was the architect of life across the galaxies, and the spire is its greatest creation. It holds the power to shape existence, to mend it, to destroy it, to create anew. But such power cannot fall into the hands of the unworthy." "And you believe I'm worthy?" Lyra whispered. Before Virax could answer, the spire itself responded. The golden light that surrounded it dimmed briefly, then shifted, forming a holographic image in midair. It was the shape of a creature, grand and ethereal, with flowing lines and shimmering wings that seemed to span galaxies. Its form flickered as though made of starlight. The dragons fell silent, bowing their massive heads in reverence. "The Celestia," Virax rumbled, awe evident in his voice. The holographic image gazed at Lyra, its eyes glowing pools of light. When it spoke, its voice was layered, resonating through the chamber like a celestial choir. "Lyra of Earth, bearer of my spark, the time has come." Lyra's knees buckled, and she fell to the ground. I don't understand. I'm just a kid. I didn't ask for any of this." The Celestia's image softened, its light dimming slightly. "You are young, yet within you lies the potential for great balance or destruction. The spire has waited eons for one who can command its power. You have awakened it, and now, its destiny and yours are intertwined." The spire pulsed again, and a beam of light shot from its pinnacle, slicing through the chamber's ceiling and into the sky above. The energy spread outward, creating ripples that began to distort the world outside. The jagged terrain of Krothatzi's prime shimmered, and glimpses of other worlds appeared in the distortion, lush forests, endless oceans, cities floating in the clouds. "What's happening?" Lyra asked, shielding her eyes. Virax stepped closer, his voice steady but tense. "The spire is revealing its true purpose, a gateway to all possibilities. It is the nexus of creation, the Celestia's final gift." The smaller dragon, its voice laced with awe, added, "But it is also a weapon. If those who are unworthy seize it, they can rewrite existence itself." Lyra's heart raced as she tried to comprehend the enormity of what was happening. The locket around her neck flared again, and she felt its energy coursing through her veins. For a moment, she saw flashes in her mind, worlds collapsing, stars exploding, lives snuffed out in an instant. Then, just as suddenly, she saw the opposite, galaxies flourishing, endless harmony, civilizations rising together. The visions left her gasping, her small frame trembling. "I can't do this," she cried. I'm just a kid. Virax lowered his massive head, his voice gentler than she'd ever heard it. You are no ordinary child. The Celestra chose you because it saw something within you that even you do not yet understand. Lyra looked at him, tears streaking her face. But what if I make the wrong choice? Virax's molten eyes locked onto hers. Then we will guide you, protect you, and ensure that the Spire's power is used wisely. You are not alone, Lyra. The other dragons roared in agreement, their voices echoing through the chamber like a symphony of thunder. For the first time since her kidnapping, Lyra felt a glimmer of hope. But the moment was short-lived. From the barrier of light separating them from the outside, a deafening roar erupted. Lyra turned to see more ships descending from the sky, their designs similar to the ones that had taken her. Reinforcements. And these weren't just reptilian captors, they were something worse. Massive biomechanical war machines, adorned with the insignias of a galactic empire Lyra didn't recognize, began deploying from the ships. The dragons growled, their bodies tensing for battle. Virax turned to Lyra, his massive wings unfurling. You must survive, child. The Spire's power is tied to your life. If they take you, all hope is lost. The Spire pulsed again, and the light around Lyra intensified, wrapping her in a protective cocoon. As the dragons prepared to defend her, she realized the truth, her journey was only beginning. And the weight of the universe now rested on her small, trembling shoulders. The fortress trembled as the enemy forces descended upon Krothatzi's prime. Biomechanical war machines deployed from sleek, iridescent ships, their towering forms bristling with weaponry and glowing with alien energy. The ground cracked and split beneath their heavy strides, and the air filled with the harsh whine of their engines and the metallic clang of their movements. These were the shock troops of the Zorath Imperium, a galactic power bent on controlling the Chronospire and wielding its reality-altering abilities. Lyra stood in the center of the chamber, her small figure enveloped in the spire's protective golden light. Around her, the dragons prepared for battle. Their plasmaline scales glimmered brighter, and their cybernetic enhancements hummed as they activated shields and weapons integrated into their bodies. Virax, the leader of the Drakkar Zenith, turned to Lyra. His molten gold eyes burned with determination. The Spire has chosen you, Lyra. Its power flows through you. But you are not ready to wield it fully. We must protect you at all costs. Lyra's voice wavered as she clutched her glowing locket. I didn't ask for any of this. I don't know how to help. Virax leaned closer, his massive form towering over her. The Celestra saw potential in you. Trust in it and in us. With a thunderous roar, Virax led the charge. He and the other dragons burst from the fortress into the ashen wasteland outside. The battlefield erupted in chaos. The Drakkar Zenith unleashed torrents of plasma breath, energy bolts, and claws charged with raw power. The war machines retaliated with devastating energy cannons, rockets, and swarms of drone-like appendages. Lyra watched from within the Spire's protective cocoon, her heart pounding. The battle was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a clash of titans. The dragons moved with fluid grace, their natural agility enhanced by their cybernetic augmentations. Virax led the assault, his massive wings slicing through the air as he rained plasma fire upon the advancing machines. But the Zorath Imperium was relentless. More ships descended, unloading waves of reinforcements. The dragons were powerful, but they were outnumbered and under siege. Lyra clenched her fists, the hum of her locket intensifying as if responding to her growing fear and desperation. Suddenly, a booming voice cut through the chaos. Human child, the Spire is your ally. It will not let you stand idle. It was the Celestra's holographic projection, its form flickering in the chamber beside her. Lyra turned to the projection, her voice trembling. What do I do? How can I help them? The Celestra's image radiated calm. You are the bridge between human ingenuity and the Drakkar Zenith's strength. Reach out to the spire. Let it amplify what lies within you. Lyra hesitated, her fear holding her back. Outside, the battle raged. She saw Virax take a direct hit from an enemy cannon, his body tumbling to the ground before he rose again, roaring in defiance. Another dragon fell moments later, its metallic wing shattered. I can't let them die. Lyra screamed. She reached out to the spire, her locket glowing in unison with its swirling energies. The moment her hands touched its surface, a surge of power rushed through her, filling her with a warmth that was both exhilarating and overwhelming. The glyphs on the spire shifted, aligning into patterns that seemed to respond to her thoughts and emotions. The Celestia's voice guided her. Focus, Lyra. The spire listens to you now. Harness its power. Strengthen the bond. Lyra closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face as she concentrated. The spire's light expanded, enveloping the entire battlefield. The dragons roared in unison as their bodies were infused with renewed energy. Plasma coursed brighter through their scales, their wings repairing themselves as if by magic, and their attacks grew more precise and devastating. Virax rose higher into the air, his voice a deafening roar of triumph. The child fights with us, he bellowed. The tide began to turn. The Drakkar Zenith, now enhanced by the spire's power, moved with a ferocity that overwhelmed the enemy war machines. Plasma breath melted their armor, claws tore through their circuits, and wings sliced through their drone swarms. One by one, the machines fell, their metallic forms collapsing into smoldering heaps. But the Zorath Imperium wasn't finished. From their flagship, a colossal war machine descended. It dwarfed the others, its size rivaling even the largest of the dragons. Its body was a fusion of alien metals and pulsing energy cores, its head adorned with jagged horns and glowing red eyes. The war machine unleashed a beam of concentrated energy that struck the ground near Virax, sending him sprawling. The other dragons faltered, momentarily stunned by the sheer power of this new foe. Lyra's eyes widened in terror as she saw Virax struggle to rise. No, she cried. Her hands pressed harder against the spire, her locket blazing with light. The Celestia's voice spoke again, firm and resolute. The spire's power is yours to command. Unleash it, Lyra. Summoning every ounce of courage, Lyra focused on the spire. The symbols on its surface glowed brighter, and the golden light surrounding her expanded further, reaching the dragons and binding them together in a web of shimmering energy. Virax! Lyra shouted. Strike now! I'll help you! The dragon lifted his head, his molten gold eyes locking onto the towering war machine. With a roar that shook the heavens, he launched himself into the air, his plasma breath cutting a fiery path toward the enemy. The other dragons followed, their combined might converging into a single, devastating assault. The golden energy from the spire wrapped around their attacks, amplifying their power. The beam struck the war machine, piercing its armor and detonating its energy cores. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a second sun, and the shockwave knocked Lyra to the ground. When the dust settled, the war machine was no more. The remaining Zorath forces retreated, their ships fleeing into the sky. The dragons roared in victory, their voices echoing across the barren moon. Lyra, exhausted and trembling, collapsed to her knees. The golden light around her faded, and the locket cooled against her chest. She looked up as Virax approached, his massive form casting a shadow over her. You are no mere child, he rumbled, his voice filled with reverence. You are the Celestia's chosen. The other dragons gathered around her, their gazes filled with respect. Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest, a sense of belonging she'd never known before. The Celestia's projection appeared one final time, its voice gentle. Lyra of Earth, you have proven your worth. The spire's power is safe in your hands. Together with the Drakkar Zenith, you will protect the balance of creation. Lyra looked up at the dragons, then at the spire. For the first time, she felt a flicker of confidence. I don't know how to be what you think I am, she said softly. But I'll try. Virax lowered his head in a gesture of respect. You will not be alone. Together, we will ensure that the Spire's power is never misused. As the remaining dragons and Lyra stepped through the gateway created by the Spire, they left behind the barren moon of Krothatzi's prime. Ahead lay a new realm, a place of infinite possibilities where humans, dragons, and all sentient beings could work together to forge a brighter future. For Lyra, it was the beginning of a journey she never expected but knew she was ready to face. She was no longer just a scared little girl. She was the Celestia's chosen, and the